Oh god, human experiments. Oh god.
Evil human
Yay!
experiments. Again.
Yay again!
What's up, you desensitized degenerates? Here's something to really
I'm
wiggle your
not!
teeth at. Back in the 1930s in Sweden, candy was becoming all the rage amongst kids and adults alike. Children couldn't wait to tongue punch their circular sweets day in and day out. Coincidentally, there was also a surge in dental complications such as cavities and tooth rot.
Dang,
Studies
really?
showed that roughly 83% of children's teeth had cavities, which, believe it or not, wasn't exactly unusual, as dental care was complete garbage. So the Swedish government decided it was time to get more enamored with enamel. Of course, right off the bat, the first to be blamed were the candy companies, but they were all, nah, that couldn't be us. Right, guys?
No, I don't think so.
There's really no data to back that up. I don't think so. Sure about that.
I mean,
But they're just selling candy. This,
In reality,
you know?
there just wasn't
Well, they're
enough
supposed to do
scientific
ban
evidence to
candy.
put the blame on anyone in particular. So in order to bridge that little gap of knowledge, the medical board decided to commission the Vipeholm study, which sought to determine a relationship between tooth decay and sugar-heavy diets. All they needed were some volunteers. But if some government drone came up to you all, hey, feel like munching on these bad boys until your teeth go gray? Unless you're an actual child with some backups pre-programmed into your
bird
skull,
crap,
you'll
thanks for the
probably
prime.
say, yeah, no, and walk away. That guy asking me if I want to willingly rot my teeth. What an idiot.
True.
What's a committee got to do to get some willing test subjects? Easy. Simply just... There we go.
Wait,
In
Sweden did
1945, With
this?
funding from both the Swedish government and the candy companies, the medical board began performing government-sanctioned trials on patients in the Vipeholm institution outside of Lund, Sweden. The establishment just so happened to house
Subtitles? Sure.
patients with severe intellectual and
subtitles.
developmental disabilities. So, in the medical
No!
board's eyes, perfect cannon fodder for the study. Between 1945 and 1947, 660 patients were given vitamins and fluoride tablets in conjunction with a low-starch meal and no snacking. After the two-year
God.
period, 73%
Yo,
of
DJ
these
Biggs,
patients
thanks for the
had not
prime.
developed any additional cavities or decay. Alright, so vitamins and fluoride are completely ruled out. Well, in 1947, the medical board swapped the vitamins and fluoride with sugar-heavy diets, which included sugary snacks, drinks, and a specially formulated tacky toffee designed to aggressively stick to teeth. By the end of the study in 1949, about 10% of patients had irreversible damage to their teeth. They were pretty much rotten to the root, being deeply
God,
coated with
ugh.
cavities, which caused
This just makes my
agonizing
mouth
pain
hurt.
day in and day out.
El Cloudy,
If you've
thanks
ever
for
had a
6 months.
toothache, you know how much that
Sentenced
sucks.
to sour
Well,
strips.
with these results showing a clear link between sugar and tooth decay,
Oh God,
the
I
candy
shouldn't.
overlords
I
weren't exactly
shouldn't.
pleased, so the scumbags decided to actually withhold the results, publishing them 4 years after the experiment had concluded, resulting in public outcry. Now,
I
of
really
course, people
shouldn't.
were more pissed at the results rather
be
than the
scared.
method, which was just brushed off as a necessary evil since the research ultimately
diets.
did very much benefit society as a whole. Back then, the severely intellectually disabled were seen as merely subhuman, with their forced participation being considered their payment to the society that took responsibility for them. It wouldn't be until the 1990s that the
suck.
ethics of the study were even questioned. Really messed up. So, remember to brush your teeth.
Yeah, brush your teeth, guys. Haha.
Oh, the monster study. Not
That's
a study
crazy.
about a monster, but
Frickin'
arguably a
Sweden.
study designed by a monster. This guy, Wendell Johnson. He was an American
Wendell
psychologist at the
Johnson.
University of Iowa in Iowa. The overall goal of the study was to determine if a child's severe stutter could be cured through positive reinforcement and encouragement. Well, that doesn't seem too bad. Oh wait, no, the study also wanted to see if a stutter could be created from being verbally abused.
Today, Junior!
Now that changes things completely. Those chosen for the study were, of course, innocent, wide-eyed, adorable orphans, which apparently are always in great
Orphans?
supply for such a situation. 22 orphans, ages 5 to 15, were ultimately chosen, being divided into groups based on speech ability. 10 of the children were considered stutterers, and 12 children had no stutter at all. The study aimed to see how both positive and negative influences affected the presence of a stutter. So, to cover all of the grounds, the study looked like this. The children were divided into 4 groups. Group 1A, 6 non-stuttering children being told, "Good job for being such good speakers." Group 2A, 6 non-stuttering children being told that they were beginning to develop a stutter, which they weren't, and told to get their shit together. Group 1B consisted
They
of
just
5
gaslighted the fuck
stuttering
out of them?
children that were told that their stutters were nothing but a phase and that they'll eventually get over it. And finally, Group 2B, 5 stuttering children who were constantly reprimanded for their inability to speak well. It's noted that only groups 2A and 1B were seen as interesting and critical to the research, as it would directly challenge the overall theory. Can you cure a stutter? Can you force a stutter? The experiments, though designed by Wendell Johnson, were conducted by University of Iowa graduate student Mary Tudor. Not this Mary Tudor, the psychopathic Queen of England, this Mary Tudor. She executed the study following only an approved script written by Johnson. Each week, she would talk with the children and document their progress. Group 1B's stutterers were told that they would, quote, outgrow the stuttering and they would be able to speak much better than they are speaking now. Pretty wholesome.
Yeah, that's
10 out of 10.
that's not
On the
a bad
other side of
thing.
the spectrum, Group 2A's non-stutterers were basically smacked upside their skulls, being told that their teachers complained about their speech problems and that they must immediately be corrected by, quote, doing anything to keep from stuttering. Don't ever speak unless they can do it right. The
Damn.
orphanage teachers were also in on the gig, being
God,
given specific
fucking
instructions
Hagrid.
to reinforce these ideas to the students as part of the fully encompassing scientific study, which lasted 5 months. The demeanor of Group 2A's children changed almost immediately. Once considered normal speaking with little to no issues, these children were now terrified to speak. They became withdrawn
How do you
and
not
hesitant, and
feel
some
like the
only really
worst
spoke
person
with
ever
1 or
for
2
doing this
word
shit?
responses. Kind of like a bad date. So, how was your day? Good. Okay, how's your chicken parm? Good. Is your phone good too? Good.
Good.
Okay, this isn't gonna work. Good. The children would even go as far as to punish themselves for any mistakes they made and would even isolate themselves from the other children. One 12-year-old girl even ended up running away from
Is
the
this the
orphanage
reason you
completely.
can't talk to
In
people?
the end, no child from Group 2A actually developed
I talk
a
to
stutter,
people
but
fine,
the
I'm
psychological
just
damage had still
awkward.
been done, with the children's communication skills being
What?
thrown into the toilet, which reportedly continued throughout their entire lives. They couldn't even tell their parents how much they loved them. As for the other groups, there was no statistically significant change in their speech quality. So, we have our answers. Can you cure a stutter by being nice? No. Can you force a stutter by being a dick? No. But you can cause long-term psychological stress by degrading and verbally abusing children. What a surprise.
Who could have guessed?
Okay, easy time's over. Time to really crank up the evil.
Wait a
The
sec-
Holmesburg
oh.
prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States,
Uh-oh.
was home to some pretty nasty human experiments from 1951 all the way to 1974. Post
long
World War
time.
II, all hats were off for the sake of scientific advancement. Pharmaceutical industry budgets had skyrocketed, and a new gold rush was created. Ethics were glossed over, informed consent was virtually
Hey, Trashy,
non-existent,
thanks for the
and
prime.
medical safety protocols were shoved aside for the sake of progress. Medical doctors were kind of just told to try some stuff out and see what sticks. After all, you don't want those evil Soviets to get ahead in the Cold War, do you? Now, some of you more savvy
It's
historians
wasted
might
for 40
ask,
months.
well, what about the Nuremberg Code of 1947, which outright banned such human experiments? Well, American scientists waved their freedom fingers and said, no. See, that code was for the gross bad Nazi guys over there.
They're like, yeah, it's
We Americans
America.
would never do
We
something
got
like
rights.
that.
We can do whatever the fuck we
No.
want.
Never. Anyway, here, try this new pill. It might cure cancer. It might make you smell colors. We haven't perfected it yet, but trust us, it'll do something. Experiments performed in the Holmesburg prison ranged from applying simple cosmetics to make everyone look pretty, to exposure to corrosive and carcinogenic chemical weapons to make everyone look pretty dead. These experiments were funded by several large corporations, including
Why?
Johnson & Johnson, the Dow Chemical Company, and even the U.S. Army. Some people have rainy day funds, mega corporations have evil experiment
Johnson
funds.
& Johnson?
Perfectly balanced.
But
It
why?
has to be said that these experiments were entirely voluntary, with prisoners being paid a few bucks here and there for their time and potential sacrifice.
Oh
But
yeah, at
when
least
an
they
individual
paid
is so
them.
desperate for money as to sell themselves
What?
in inhumane trials, is it really voluntary? Well, yeah. Here's your $2. Same time tomorrow? One of the head honchos over there was American dermatologist Dr. Albert Kligman. When he entered the Holmesburg prison for the first time, he was quoted saying that all he saw before him were acres of skin. It was like a farmer seeing a fertile field for the first time.
What?
So that right there, that's an obvious red flag.
That's fucking
not
creepy.
A normal thought that you should have.
What
Inmate
the
records
fuck?
described experiments including
That's
exposure
fucking
to various
psychotic.
STDs, skin blistering chemicals,
Okay.
radiation, psychoactive drugs, and carcinogenic compounds. The most famous being dioxins, which would become a key ingredient for Agent Orange, an herbicide which is known to have directly killed over 700,000 American and Vietnamese people during the Vietnam War. But that's another story. Not really. The U.S. developed an herbicide that
It's
directly
not
killed
the
over
time to
700,000
use the
people during the
fucking
Vietnam War.
orange.
So, prisoners were poked, prodded, sliced, sewn, exposed, drugged, you name it. But this wasn't just happening in Holmesburg.
God.
Inmates, along with other, quote, throwaway humans, like those in mental hospitals all over the United States,
So
were
dumb.
nothing but lab rats to the medical community. That's all the value they had left as humans. At least, that was the general consensus at the time. Prisoners would line up day in and day out to see what the new test of the day was and how
Oh,
much free
yay.
cash they could get out of it. Yeah, I heard they'll slap your balls for $5. Oh, neat. I'm usually the one paying for that one. One prisoner by the name of Withers Ponton noted how he was laid on the
Sweet.
table where two doctors cut open his lower back.
Okay.
They proceeded to stuff him with medical gauze and sewed him back up, only to remove the gauze 10 days later with no idea what they were really doing it for. But
Why?
he got $10 out of it for each cut.
$10?
When the 1970s rolled around, it was estimated that over 90% of the
That's
prison's
fucking
population
insane.
had participated in at least one test. It was also at this time that the attitude towards human experimentation shifted to kind of like maybe that's a bad thing to do. Although many
Yeah.
great scientific advancements
not good
were
at all.
achieved through these experiments, it left the subjects scarred for life, both physically and mentally. But let me ask you this. Would you trust that a medicine would work in theory on paper? Or would you rather have it be proven to work by shoving weird pills into real human subjects? There's medical research, and then there's just plain evil torture. Since you're watching a video about evil experiments, you've probably heard of Josef Mengele, also known as the Angel of Death. and
Oh,
arguably
I've
one
heard
of the
of-
most
I have
evil
heard
men
about
in
this
human
guy.
history. Sure, Adolf the red-nosed dickhead was the big stinky cheese of the whole Nazi operation, but remember that there were monsters that willingly and enthusiastically carried out his orders. Mengele was one of such monsters. He was a World War II German SS officer and physician at Birkenau, a part of the Auschwitz death camp in Poland. Since SS doctors didn't administer any treatment to sick and dying prisoners themselves, Mengele's job was to make sure that the inmate doctors were treating the prisoners to get them back to a working condition. Any prisoners who did not recover within 2 weeks were nonchalantly sent to the gas chambers without hesitation. And that's just a taste of this complete bastard's inconceivable evils. Mengele would use his position of power as an opportunity to satisfy his demented curiosities. After all, he was a medical doctor. Among his greatest interests were people with heterochromia iridium, meaning that they had two different color eyes, very popular amongst the anime fangirls, people with dwarfism and other physical abnormalities,
Why-
and perhaps his
why
strongest
mention
interest
that?
being identical twins. Mengele had handpicked over 1,500 subjects, mostly children, who would be spared the gas chamber and even fed and housed better than the normal death camp population.
Great info.
But at a terrible
yeah.
cost. An inmate doctor under Mengele was quoted saying that he was capable of being so kind to the children, to have them become fond of him, to bring them sugar, to think of small details in their daily lives, and to do things we would genuinely admire. And then, next to that, the crematoria smoke. And these children, tomorrow or in a half hour, he's gonna send them there. Well, that is where the anomaly lay. Such a
It's
human
just so
void
terrifying
of
that
empathy
people like
is
that
truly
have
horrifying,
lived.
because you just never know what they are really capable of and how far they will go to accomplish their own selfish goals. His experimental
do,
designs
yeah,
had
I'm
zero
sure.
consideration for the health, safety, or the physical, mental, or emotional impact on the victims. He was given full control to do as he pleased. For his twin patients, he often performed his experiments on one twin and treated the other as a control for a direct comparison of results. Experiments included the amputation of healthy limbs, forceful injection of disease, blood transfusions, removal of teeth and organs without anesthesia, and even creating his own Siamese twins by sewing two children together. Perhaps one of his more infamous pieces of work was injecting adrenaline directly into eyeballs to change their color. The eyeballs would be removed from living victims and studied, with some being pinned to his wall as trophies. Once experiments were completed, he would kill off and dissect the control twin to report any findings. Out of his 1,500 victims, only 200 reportedly survived. Keep in mind that Mengele wasn't even the highest ranking medical officer or even in a relatively high position of power. There were many other evil doctors who performed their own experiments on victims. Karl Claudberg had researched mass sterilization by radiation and chemical injection, contributing to the sterilization of over 400,000 people. Sigmund Rascher had researched the human limits and treatments of hypothermia
God, that
and
picture with the
exposure
baby
to
is
low
so
and
creepy.
high-pressure environments. Hans Eppinger had forced starving and dehydrated prisoners to drink filtered seawater to determine drinkability. Karl Valnetz had claimed to have developed a cure for homosexuality with testosterone-based implants and forced castration. There were dozens of other medical officers who conducted these human experiments.
Yeah, I wonder how that
many
went.
of whom who escaped prosecution after Germany had fallen in World War II. Mengele, like many other SS officers, fled to Argentina after the war was over. He evaded capture and survived until 1979 when, while doing a backstroke in the ocean, suffered a front stroke and drowned, left to float in the ocean like the piece of shit he was.
Good.
Well, there were about 16,000
Pathetic.
documented victims of human experimentation by the Germans, with about a quarter succumbing to their suffering. But it is unknown what the true number of experiment victims may be. If you're interested in other human experiments, check this video out. Also,
Well, we
remember to
already watched
subscribe
the
to see
Blood
more
Eagle
future
blood.
content. Now cue that RuneScape music.
Man, he always picks the worst one to leave off. You know, maybe we should watch. How about we watch terrible things that aren't real now?